The telegram arrived on a scorching July morning in 1882, and Wade Harrington read it 3 times before crumpling it in his fist, sweat dripping down his weathered face as he stood on the porch of his sprawling ranch house outside Council Bluffs, Iowa. His housekeeper of 15 years had passed away unexpectedly while visiting family in Kansas City, leaving him with a 3,000-acre cattle operation, 12 ranch hands to feed, and absolutely no idea how to manage the domestic side of running a home. He had placed an advertisement in newspapers across 3 states for a live-in housekeeper, expecting some matronly woman who would cook, clean, and stay out of his way, while he focused on the ranch that had consumed his entire adult life. What he got instead was Sofia Martinez, and from the moment she stepped off the train 2 weeks later with fire in her dark eyes and mud on her traveling dress, Wade knew his carefully ordered world was about to be turned completely upside down. She was not what he expected. Wade had pictured someone older, someone who would defer to his authority without question, someone who understood that he ran this ranch with an iron will, because that was the only way to survive in this unforgiving landscape. Sofia was 24 years old, with thick black hair braided down her back and a directness in her gaze that made him shift uncomfortably. She stood on the platform with a single worn carpetbag and a leather satchel, scanning the crowd until her eyes landed on him. Wade was 31, tall and broad-shouldered from years of hard labor, with sandy brown hair that needed cutting and blue eyes that had seen more than their fair share of hardship. He approached her with his hat in his hands, suddenly aware of the dust on his boots and the stubble on his jaw. "Miss Martinez?" he asked, his voice gruff. "Mr. Harrington," she replied, not a question but a statement, as if she had already sized him up and drawn her conclusions. "I received your offer. I am here to work." Her English was perfect, with only the slightest accent that spoke of Spanish spoken at home, of a childhood somewhere warmer than Iowa's harsh winters. Wade reached for her bag, but she had already picked it up, hoisting it with ease that suggested she was no stranger to physical labor. He blinked, momentarily thrown off balance, then gestured toward the wagon. "It is about a 40-minute ride to the ranch," he said, leading the way. "I should tell you about the position. I have 12 men working the ranch, and they need 3 meals a day. The house needs maintaining, laundry, that sort of thing. I pay fair wages, and you will have your own room off the kitchen. Sundays are half days unless we are in the middle of calving season or another emergency." Sofia climbed onto the wagon seat without waiting for assistance, settling her skirts around her with practiced efficiency. "And what are your expectations of how I should conduct this work?" Wade climbed up beside her, taking the reins. "I expect things done properly. Meals on time, house kept clean, and no complaints from the men about the food. My last housekeeper, Mrs. Brennan, she ran things smooth as silk for 15 years. I need that same level of competence." "I see." Sofia looked out at the landscape rolling past them, the endless prairie grass bending in the hot summer wind. "And you expect I will simply follow whatever system she established without question?" "Well, yes," Wade said, frowning. "She had a good system. No reason to change what works." Sofia turned to look at him then, and there was something in her expression that made him distinctly uneasy. "Mr. Harrington, I am not Mrs. Brennan. I will do the work you hired me to do, and I will do it well, but I will do it my way. If my way produces the results you need, then we will have no problems. If you cannot accept that, then you should turn this wagon around right now and take me back to the station." Wade felt his jaw tighten. He was not accustomed to being challenged, certainly not by someone he had just hired. But the truth was, he needed a housekeeper desperately, and finding someone willing to live on an isolated ranch miles from town was not easy. He had already waited 2 weeks and the house was in shambles. Pride warred with practicality, and practicality won. "Fine," he said tersely. "Do it your way. But the men better be fed and they better not be complaining." "They will not be," Sofia said with absolute confidence, turning her attention back to the landscape. They rode the rest of the way in silence, and Wade used the time to steal glances at this unusual woman who had just upended his expectations completely. She sat straight-backed and alert, taking in every detail of the land they passed through. When they crested the hill that gave the first view of the Harrington ranch, he felt the usual swell of pride. The main house was 2 stories, built from good timber and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. The barn was massive, painted red with white trim, and the various outbuildings spoke of a prosperous, well-maintained operation. Cattle dotted the far pastures, and he could see some of his men working near the corrals. "It is bigger than I expected," Sofia said, and for the first time he heard something other than steely determination in her voice. Was that appreciation? Nervousness? "It is a good ranch," Wade said, unable to keep the pride entirely out of his voice. "I have built it up from nothing over the past 10 years. My father left me this land, but it was wild prairie then. Everything you see, I have made with my own hands and the help of good men." "And now you need help with the parts you cannot do yourself," Sofia said, and there was no mockery in her tone, just observation. "I can do it," Wade said defensively. "I just do not have time to do it and run the ranch." "Of course," Sofia agreed mildly, but he had the uncomfortable feeling she saw right through him. He pulled the wagon up to the main house, and before he could move to help her down, Sofia had already jumped lightly to the ground, reaching for her bags. Wade hurried to help anyway, and their hands brushed as they both grabbed the handle of her carpetbag. The contact was brief but electric, and they both pulled back as if burned. "I can manage," Sofia said quickly. "I am just being polite," Wade replied, more sharply than he intended. "Then I thank you for your politeness," she said, stepping back and letting him take the bag. He led her inside, and even he could see the house through her eyes. Dust on every surface, dishes piled in the kitchen, floors that had not been properly swept in weeks. He had been batching it with the men eating in the bunkhouse, and the main house had become little more than a place where he slept. Guilt and embarrassment warred in his chest. "I know it is a mess," he said stiffly. "That is why I needed to hire someone." Sofia set down her leather satchel and walked slowly through the front hall, looking into the parlor, then the dining room, then into the kitchen at the back of the house. Her expression was unreadable. When she turned back to him, she had rolled up her sleeves, revealing strong, tanned forearms. "Show me where I will be sleeping, and then I need you to leave me to work," she said. "What time do the men expect their evening meal?" 6 o'clock, Wade said. "But you do not need to start today. You just arrived, you should rest." "I do not need rest. I need to see what I am working with," Sofia replied. The room, Wade led her to the small bedroom off the kitchen. It had been Mrs. Brennan's room, simple but comfortable, with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the vegetable garden that had long since gone to weeds. Sofia set her bags on the bed and turned to him. "I will start now. Please go to your work, Mr. Harrington." He wanted to argue, wanted to establish some kind of authority, but the truth was he had a dozen things demanding his attention on the ranch. "All right. If you need anything, I will be in the north pasture checking the fence line. One of the men can show you where things are." "I will find what I need," Sofia said, already turning away from him to unpack her bags. Wade left, feeling oddly dismissed in his own home. He told himself he should be grateful she was so independent that she did not need his hand held. But instead, he felt unsettled, as if something fundamental had shifted and he could not quite identify what it was. He worked through the afternoon, riding fence lines and checking on cattle, but his mind kept drifting back to the woman now inhabiting his house. When 6 o'clock rolled around, he was shocked to hear the dinner bell ringing, the clear sound carrying across the prairie. He had not heard that bell since Mrs. Brennan passed. His men were already heading toward the house, and he followed, curious and apprehensive about what Sofia had managed to accomplish in just a few hours. The house had been transformed. The smell of fresh bread and roasting meat filled the air, and when Wade walked into the dining room, he found the table set properly for 13, the dust cleared away, and platters of food already waiting. His men filed in, removing their hats and looking around with barely concealed amazement. Sofia emerged from the kitchen carrying a massive pot of beans, and she set it on the table with confidence. "Sit," she said simply, and to Wade's astonishment, every single man immediately obeyed, taking their usual seats around the long table. The meal was simple but perfectly executed. Roasted chicken, beans seasoned with cumin and chili peppers in a way Wade had never tasted before, fresh bread that was still warm, and potatoes with butter and herbs. The men ate with enthusiasm, and more than one of them cast appreciative glances at Sofia as she moved between the kitchen and dining room, refilling platters and ensuring everyone had enough. Wade ate in silence, his mind racing. The food was different from what Mrs. Brennan had made, but it was undeniably delicious. More than that, Sofia had somehow managed to clean the dining room, cook an entire meal for 13 men and make it look effortless, all in the space of a few hours. When the men started to push back from the table, full and satisfied, Sofia appeared with coffee and a dried apple pie that made Wade question whether he had somehow missed her baking it. "Miss Martinez," said Charlie, one of his oldest ranch hands, a grizzled man in his 50s who rarely smiled. "That was the finest meal I have had in a month. You have a gift." Sofia inclined her head. "Thank you. I am glad it was satisfactory." The men filed out, back to the bunkhouse or to evening chores, and Wade found himself alone with Sofia as she began clearing the table. He stood, picking up his own plate and carrying it to the kitchen. "You do not need to do that," Sofia said, taking the plate from him. "This is my job. I can help," Wade protested. "You hired me to do this work. Let me do it." Her tone was not harsh, but it was final. Wade stood there awkwardly for a moment, then retreated to his study, a small room off the front hall where he kept his account books and ranch records. But he could not focus on the numbers in front of him. He kept thinking about the way Sofia had commanded the dining room, the quiet confidence with which she had served the meal, the hint of spice and unfamiliar flavors that had made everything taste new and exciting. He had expected a servant, someone to fade into the background and handle the domestic necessities while he focused on what really mattered, the ranch. Instead, he had hired someone who refused to be invisible, who challenged him, who looked at him like an equal rather than an employer. It was unsettling. It was frustrating. It was also, Wade admitted reluctantly to himself, refreshing. The next morning he woke to the smell of coffee and breakfast already cooking. When he came downstairs, the kitchen was warm and welcoming, and Sofia handed him a plate of eggs, bacon, and fried potatoes without a word. He sat at the small table in the kitchen, the one Mrs. Brennan had always used for the family meals, and ate while Sofia moved around the kitchen with economical efficiency. "The men will need to eat in shifts this week," Wade said, trying to establish some normal working relationship. We are moving the herd to the south pasture, and I need everyone ready to ride by dawn." "What time is dawn this week?" Sofia asked, not looking up from the dough she was kneading. "About 5:30. "Then I will have breakfast ready at 5. They can eat in shifts as they arrive." Wade blinked. Mrs. Brennan had always complained about early mornings. "That is very early." "It is when the work needs to be done," Sofia said simply. "This is a working ranch. I understood that when I took the position." Over the following weeks, a pattern developed. Sofia proved herself to be an extraordinary housekeeper, but not in the way Wade had expected. She did not ask his permission to rearrange the kitchen to be more efficient. She did not consult him when she started planting a new vegetable garden, tearing out the weeds and working the soil until she had neat rows of plants thriving in the Iowa summer. She did not seek his approval when she started teaching 2 of the younger ranch hands to read in the evenings, using old newspapers and the Bible from the parlor. She simply did what she thought needed doing, and the results spoke for themselves. The house ran more smoothly than it ever had. The meals were better. The men were happier, and Wade found himself increasingly unsettled by this woman who refused to fit into any box he tried to put her in. The confrontation came on a hot August afternoon. Wade had come back to the house unexpectedly, needing a tool from the barn, and he found Sofia on a ladder, repairing a shutter on the second floor that had come loose. She was balanced precariously, hammer in hand, driving nails with competent strikes. "What are you doing?" Wade called up, his heart suddenly in his throat at the sight of her so high up. "What does it look like I am doing?" Sofia replied, not pausing in her work. "The shutter was banging all night. It needed fixing. You should have told me. I would have fixed it. You have enough to do." "I can fix a shutter." "Get down from there right now," Wade said, his voice harder than he intended. "That is not your job." Sofia paused then, looking down at him. "Excuse me," I said, "get down. You are a housekeeper, not a ranch hand. If something needs fixing, you tell me or one of the men." Sofia climbed down the ladder with deliberate slowness, and when she reached the ground, she faced him with her arms crossed over her chest. "I am perfectly capable of repairing a shutter, Mr. Harrington." "That is not the point. You could have fallen. You could have been hurt." "I have been climbing ladders since I was 10 years old. I know how to be safe." "It is not appropriate," Wade said, grasping for the real reason for his anger, which he could not quite articulate even to himself. "What would people think, seeing my housekeeper doing repairs?" "I do not care what people think," Sofia said, her dark eyes flashing. "I care about doing what needs to be done. You hired me to take care of this house. A broken shutter is part of the house. I took care of it." "I hired you to cook and clean, not to take over running everything," Wade shot back, and as soon as the words were out, he knew they were wrong. Sofia went very still. "I see. You want me to stay in my place, to be invisible, to do only exactly what you tell me to do and nothing more." "That is not what I said." "It is exactly what you said." Her voice was quiet now, but there was steel underneath. "You want a servant, Mr. Harrington. Someone who will keep your house and never challenge you, never think for themselves, never step outside the narrow boundaries you have decided are appropriate. I told you when I arrived that I am not that person. I will not become that person, not even for fair wages and a good position." She turned to walk away, but Wade caught her arm without thinking. "Wait." Sofia looked down at his hand on her arm, and he released her immediately, suddenly aware of how inappropriate the touch had been. But he could not let her walk away, could not let this fester. "You are right," he said, the words coming hard. "I am sorry. I did want someone who would just fit into the system I already had. I was not expecting you." "Expecting what?" Sofia asked, her expression guarded. "Someone who has their own ideas." someone who sees what needs doing and does it without being told, someone who is not afraid to challenge me." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "You are right that I wanted a servant, but what I got was something different, someone different." "And you do not like that," Sofia said. "I do not know," Wade admitted. "It is unsettling. This ranch, everything about my life, I built it by being in control, by making the decisions and having people follow them. You do not follow, you do your own thing." "Because my own thing works," Sofia said firmly. "Tell me, Mr. Harrington, is the house running well? Yes. Are the meals good? Are the men fed and satisfied? Yes. Is anything being neglected? No, but then why does it matter how I accomplish these things?" Sofia demanded. "Why does it matter if I fix a shutter or plant a garden or teach young men to read? I am doing the job you hired me to do, and I am doing it well. The only problem is that I am not doing it the way you expected, the way that allows you to feel completely in control." Her words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Wade stared at her, seeing the truth in what she said, hating that truth and admiring her courage for speaking it in equal measure. "You are right," he said finally, "and I do not know what to do with that." Something shifted in Sofia's expression, a softening around her eyes. "You could try trusting me. You could try seeing me as someone who is working toward the same goal as you are, keeping this ranch running well. We do not have to be employer and servant. We could be partners in this." "Partners," Wade repeated, testing the word. It felt strange, foreign, applied to a woman he had hired to keep his house. "Partners," Sofia confirmed. "You handle the cattle and the land, I handle the house and the meals, but we respect each other's judgment. We trust each other to know what needs doing in our own domains. We work together instead of you trying to control everything I do." It went against everything Wade had believed about how things should work. Men ran ranches. Women kept houses. There was a hierarchy, an order to things. But as he stood there looking at Sofia, at the intelligence in her eyes and the strength in the set of her shoulders, he realized that his old way of thinking was not serving him well. She was right. The house was running better than it ever had. The men were happier. Everything was working. The only problem was his own need for control. "All right," he said slowly. "Partners, I will try." "Trying is a good start," Sofia said, and for the first time since he had met her, she smiled at him. It transformed her face, making her beautiful in a way that hit Wade like a punch to the gut. He turned away quickly, muttering something about getting back to work, and fled to the relative safety of the north pasture where nothing challenged him except the weather and the land. But that night, lying in bed, Wade could not stop thinking about that smile. About the way Sofia had stood up to him without backing down. About the strange new word that hung between them, partners. The summer deepened into late August and early September, and Wade found himself paying attention to Sofia in ways that had nothing to do with evaluating her work. He noticed the way she hummed while she cooked, old songs in Spanish that filled the kitchen with melody. He noticed how she always had a kind word for the men, how she remembered their names and their preferences, how young Billy's reading had improved remarkably under her patient tutelage. He noticed the streak of flour on her cheek when she had been baking, the way her hair escaped its braid in curling tendrils by the end of the day, the competence of her hands as she kneaded bread or mended shirts, or wrote careful letters for the men who could not write for themselves. He tried not to notice. He tried to maintain the professional distance appropriate between an employer and his employee. But it was becoming increasingly impossible. The crisis came on a cool September evening. Wade had been in town for supplies, and he returned to find Sofia in the vegetable garden, harvesting the last of the tomatoes before the first frost could claim them. The setting sun turned everything golden, and she was singing softly to herself, some Spanish ballad he did not understand but found achingly beautiful anyway. He stood watching her for longer than he should have, until she looked up and caught him staring. She straightened, pushing hair back from her face, leaving a smudge of dirt on her forehead. "You are back," she said. "Did you get the flour I needed?" "5 bags in the wagon," Wade replied. "Let me help you with those tomatoes." "I can manage," Sofia started to say, then stopped herself, smiling slightly. "But I would appreciate the help. Thank you." They worked together in companionable silence, filling baskets with the red fruit. Wade was acutely aware of her closeness, of the way their hands occasionally brushed, of the clean scent of her despite the day's work. "The garden has done well this year," Wade said, desperate for something to break the tension he felt. "Better than Mrs. Brennan ever managed." "The soil here is good," Sofia replied. "It just needed attention. And I brought seeds from home, vegetables that thrive in this climate." "Where is home?" Wade asked, realizing he knew almost nothing about her past. Sofia was quiet for a moment, her hands stilling in the tomato plants. "Texas. A small town near San Antonio. My father had a farm there. He died 3 years ago. A fever took him and my mother both within a week of each other. My older brother inherited the farm and he brought home a wife who did not want me there, so I left." "I am sorry," Wade said quietly. "That must have been hard." "Life is hard," Sofia said with a shrug, "but we survive. We find new places, new purposes. This ranch, this work, it is good, better than I expected." "Why did you answer my advertisement?" Wade asked. "A woman with your skills, you could have found work closer to home." Sofia looked at him directly then. "Because I wanted to go somewhere no one knew me, somewhere I could be judged on my work rather than my family or my past. Because the advertisement said you needed someone competent and hardworking, not someone pretty or deferential. Because it sounded like a place where I might be allowed to simply do good work and be valued for that." "And has it been?" Wade asked, his heart beating faster than it should. "Mostly," Sofia said, a hint of teasing in her voice. "Except when the rancher decides I should not be fixing shutters." "I apologized for that," Wade protested, but he was smiling. "I know, and you have been better since then, more willing to let me do things my way." "It has not been easy," Wade admitted. "I am used to being in charge of everything." "I have noticed," Sofia said dryly, "but you are learning. That takes courage, to change how you see things." They finished gathering the tomatoes and carried the baskets to the kitchen. Sofia immediately set about washing them and preparing them for canning, and Wade found himself staying to help, drawn by her presence in a way he could no longer deny. "Tell me about the ranch," Sofia said as they worked. "How did you build all this?" So Wade told her, the words coming more easily than he expected. He told her about inheriting raw land from his father, about the first hard years of breaking prairie and building the house with his own hands, about the gamble of buying his first cattle and the lean winters when he was not sure the ranch would survive. He told her about the satisfaction of seeing his herd grow, of hiring good men and building something that mattered, of proving to himself and everyone else that he could turn wilderness into prosperity. Sofia listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed she understood the ranching business better than he would have expected. As they talked, the kitchen grew dark around them, and Wade lit lamps without conscious thought, unwilling to break the spell of this conversation. "You have done something remarkable," Sofia said when he finished. "You should be proud." "I am," Wade said, "but I am starting to realize that I built something that was missing a crucial piece. I focused so much on the cattle and the land that I let the house, the home part of it, fall apart. Until you came and showed me what it could be." "A house is just walls without someone to care for it," Sofia said softly. But when someone tends it properly, it becomes a home. That is what I try to create." "You have succeeded," Wade said. And then, because the moment felt balanced on some kind of edge, because her dark eyes were looking at him with something that might have been the same awareness he felt, he added, "You have made this feel like a real home for the first time in my life." Sofia drew in a sharp breath, and the air between them felt charged with possibility. Wade took a step closer, unable to help himself, and Sofia did not move away. "Wade," she said, his first name falling from her lips for the first time, and the sound of it sent electricity down his spine. "I know this is not appropriate," Wade said, his voice rough. "I know I am your employer and there is a right way for these things to work. But Sofia, I cannot stop thinking about you. I cannot stop noticing everything you do, everything you are. You have turned my whole world sideways and I do not know what to do about it." "So I have noticed," Sofia said, and there was warmth in her voice, teasing and serious all at once. "You are not subtle, Wade Harrington." "Is that a problem?" he asked, hardly daring to breathe. "I do not know," Sofia said honestly. "This is complicated. I work for you. I depend on you for my wages, my home. There is a power imbalance that makes this dangerous." "I would never use that against you," Wade said fiercely. "Never. If you do not feel the same way, nothing changes. Your position here is secure regardless." "And if I do feel the same way," Sofia asked quietly, "what then?" Wade felt his heart stop. "Do you?" Sofia stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "I told myself I should not. That it was foolish to develop feelings for my employer. That I should keep my distance and maintain professional boundaries. But yes, Wade, I feel the same way. You are stubborn and controlling and sometimes infuriating, but you are also honest and hardworking and willing to change when you realize you are wrong. That last part, that is rare. And these past weeks, working beside you, building something here together, I have found myself caring for you more than is wise." Wade reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and cupped her face with his calloused hand. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing briefly. "This is not how I expected things to go," Wade said. "When I hired a housekeeper, I was not looking for this." "What were you looking for?" Sofia asked. "A servant," Wade admitted. "Someone to take care of the mundane things so I could focus on the important work." "But you taught me something, Sofia. You taught me that the work you do is just as important as mine. That running a home takes as much skill and intelligence as running a ranch. That we are not master and servant, but partners working toward the same goal. You taught me the true meaning of equals, even though I fought against that lesson every step of the way." "And now," Sofia whispered, "now I want more than a partnership," Wade said. "I want you, Sofia Martinez. I want to court you properly if you will let me. I want to see where this could lead." "Your men will talk," Sofia warned. "The town will gossip. A rancher courting his housekeeper, it will cause scandal." "Let them talk," Wade said. "I have spent my whole life caring too much about what people think, about doing things the right way according to society's rules. Those rules did not account for someone like you. Someone strong and capable and unwilling to fit into neat boxes. If the price of having you in my life is some gossip, I will pay it gladly." Sofia smiled then, that transformative smile that made his breath catch. "Then yes, Wade Harrington. You may court me, but we do this properly. I will not be some secret shame. If you are courting me, then we do it openly, where everyone can see that you value me as an equal." "I would not have it any other way," Wade said. And then, because he could not resist any longer, he lowered his head and kissed her. Her lips were soft and warm, and when she kissed him back, wrapping her arms around his neck, Wade felt something settle in his chest that he had not even known was restless. This was right. This woman, this partnership, this beginning of something new and uncertain and absolutely terrifying. This was what he had been missing all along. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sofia rested her forehead against his chest. This is going to be complicated. Probably, Wade agreed, running his hands down her back. But anything worth having usually is. True to his word, Wade courted Sofia openly. He began sitting with her in the kitchen during meals instead of eating with the men. He walked with her in the evenings after the day's work was done, talking about everything and nothing. On Sundays, he took her into Council Bluffs in the wagon, and they attended church together, and he bought her ribbons at the general store without caring who saw or what they whispered. The men on the ranch accepted the relationship with far more ease than Wade expected. Charlie actually clapped him on the back one evening and said, "About time, boss. We were wondering when you would figure out what was obvious to everyone else." The town was less accepting. Wade heard the whispers, saw the disapproving looks from the so-called respectable ladies. But he also saw the way Sofia held her head high, refusing to be ashamed or diminished. She greeted everyone with polite respect, and she challenged anyone who treated her with disrespect to say something directly rather than whisper behind her back. Wade had never been more proud of anyone in his life. Their courtship deepened through the autumn. They talked about their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Sofia shared stories of growing up in Texas, of learning to cook from her mother and farm from her father, of the pain of losing them and the difficulty of finding her place in a world that did not always welcome a Mexican woman with ideas of her own. Wade told her about his father's death when Wade was 20, about the overwhelming responsibility of inheriting land he had no idea how to manage, about the loneliness of building a ranch, but having no one to truly share it with. "I thought the ranch would be enough," Wade confessed one October evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I thought if I could just build something successful, prove myself worthy of my father's legacy, that would fill the emptiness. But it did not." "Building something is not the same as having someone to share it with," Sofia said, her hand finding his. "We are not meant to be alone, Wade. We are meant to find people who see us truly, who challenge us to be better, who stand beside us as equals in the building of a life." "Is that what we are doing?" Wade asked. "Building a life together, I think we are," Sofia said softly. "If that is what you want." "It is everything I want," Wade said. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Marry me, Sofia. Not as my housekeeper, not as my employee, but as my partner, my equal, my wife. Help me run this ranch, make this house truly a home. Let me spend the rest of my life learning from you and growing with you." Sofia's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, Wade, I will marry you." Wade pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply as the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. When they finally broke apart, Sofia was laughing, joyful and free in a way he had never heard from her before. "We should go to town tomorrow," she said. "Talk to the minister, set a date." "Why wait?" Wade asked. "Let us get married as soon as possible. I have waited long enough to find you. I do not want to wait any longer to make you my wife." They were married 3 weeks later, on a cool November morning in the small church in Council Bluffs. The ceremony was simple, attended by Wade's ranch hands and a few friends from town. Sofia wore a new dress of deep blue that made her skin glow and her eyes shine, and Wade wore his best suit, feeling constrained by the collar but not caring because he could not stop looking at his bride. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and Wade kissed Sofia before God and witnesses, he felt something profound settle in his soul. This was right. This was what he had been moving toward his entire life without knowing it. The ranch hands threw a celebration back at the house, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the night. Wade danced with his wife under the stars, holding her close and marveling at how completely his life had changed in just a few short months. "Are you happy?" Sofia asked, her head resting against his chest as they swayed to the fiddle music. "Happier than I knew I could be," Wade replied honestly. "You have given me everything I did not know I needed." "We have given each other that," Sofia corrected gently. "That is what partnership means. We both bring our whole selves, and together we create something neither of us could build alone." Their first winter as husband and wife was harsh, with bitter cold and heavy snows that isolated the ranch for weeks at a time. But inside the house, there was warmth and laughter and a sense of completion that Wade had never experienced. Sofia ran the household with the same competent efficiency she always had, but now there was an added intimacy to their daily routines. They worked together on the account books in the evenings, Sofia's sharp mind for numbers proving invaluable. They made decisions about the ranch together, Wade learning to value her perspective even when it differed from his own. In February, Sofia told him she was pregnant. Wade felt terror and joy in equal measure, suddenly aware of how much more he had to lose now, how precious this life they were building together truly was. "Are you afraid?" Sofia asked, reading his expression accurately. "Terrified," Wade admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I am not a good father? What if—" Sofia stopped his spiraling thoughts with a kiss. "We will figure it out together, just like everything else. That is what partners do." The baby came in early October of 1883, a healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Samuel Wade Harrington, and Wade held his son for the first time with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Wade whispered, staring down at the tiny, precious life they had created together. "He is ours," Sofia said, exhausted but radiant. "The first of many, I hope." "Many?" Wade asked, looking up at her in surprise. "You do not think I am going to let you be outnumbered, do you?" Sofia teased. "This house is big enough for several children, and a ranch needs heirs to carry it forward." Over the next 5 years, Sofia gave Wade 3 more children. A daughter named Rose in 1885, another son named James in 1887, and finally another daughter named Catherine in 1889. The house that had once been empty and lonely now rang with the sounds of children's laughter, and Wade could not imagine his life any other way. He taught his children to ride and rope and understand the land. Sofia taught them to read and write and think for themselves. Together, they raised children who understood the value of hard work and the importance of treating all people with respect, regardless of their station in life. As the years passed, the ranch continued to prosper. Wade made Sofia a full partner in the business, putting her name on the deed and ensuring she had equal say in all decisions. Some people in town still whispered about it, about the impropriety of a woman having such authority, but Wade did not care. Sofia had earned her place, and more than that, she had taught him that true partnership meant sharing everything. The work, the decisions, the profits, and the risks. In 1895, when Wade was 44 and Sofia 37, they sat on their porch on a summer evening watching their children play in the yard. Samuel was nearly 12 now, tall and serious like his father. Rose was 10, with her mother's fierce independence. James was 8, always laughing and finding adventure. And Catherine was 6, the baby of the family with a sweet nature that wrapped everyone around her finger. "You remember when I first arrived?" Sofia asked, her hand in Wade's. "How angry you were that I would not just follow your orders blindly," Wade laughed. "I remember. I was a fool. I wanted a servant, someone who would fit neatly into my vision of how things should work. And instead you got me, Sofia said with satisfaction. Instead I got you, Wade agreed, pulling her close. A partner who challenged me, who refused to be diminished, who taught me that strength comes in many forms. You taught me that true equality is not about one person submitting to another, but about both people bringing their full selves to the partnership. You taught me that love is not about control or authority, but about mutual respect and shared dreams. You learned well, Sofia said, kissing him softly, though it took you some time. Some lessons are worth the struggle to learn, Wade said, and this one changed my entire life. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and thriving, a testament to years of hard work and shared vision. But more than the physical success, Wade treasured the life they had created within these walls. A family built on love and respect, children who were being raised to value competence and character over arbitrary social rules, a partnership that had only grown stronger with time. I love you, Wade said, the words coming easily after so many years of practice. I love you too, Sofia replied, my stubborn rancher who learned to see beyond his own expectations. Your partner, Wade corrected, always and forever your equal partner. As darkness fell and the stars came out overhead, they called their children inside for the evening meal. The family gathered around the table that Sofia had first set so many years ago, and Wade looked around at the faces he loved more than anything in the world, marveling at how much his life had changed since that hot July day when he had expected a servant and met a partner instead. The conversation flowed around him as they ate, Samuel talking about the cattle he had been working with, Rose excitedly describing a book she was reading, James recounting some adventure with the ranch dogs, and Catherine begging for a story before bed. Sofia managed it all with practiced ease, keeping order while still allowing each child to be heard, serving food while contributing her own thoughts to the discussions. This was what Wade had been missing all those years ago. Not just a housekeeper to cook and clean, but a true partner to share life's burdens and joys. Someone who saw him not as a master to be served, but as an equal to be challenged and supported in equal measure. Someone who brought their own strength and vision and made everything better by their presence. After the children were in bed, Wade and Sofia returned to the porch, a nightly ritual they both cherished. The prairie stretched out before them under a canopy of stars, vast and beautiful and unforgiving. But together, they had tamed this land, built something lasting, created a legacy that would endure. "What are you thinking about?" Sofia asked, reading his contemplative mood. "About how lucky I am," Wade said simply. "That you answered my advertisement, that you refused to be what I expected, that you saw potential for something more than just employer and employee." "I saw a lonely man who had built walls around himself," Sofia said. "Strong walls, successful walls, but walls nonetheless. I wanted to show you that letting someone in, truly in as an equal partner, did not mean losing control. It meant gaining something far more valuable." "You succeeded," Wade said, "though I fought you every step of the way at first." "The best lessons are the ones we resist," Sofia said with a smile, "because they challenge us to grow beyond who we thought we were." The years continued to pass, each bringing its own challenges and triumphs. Droughts tested their resources, harsh winters culled their herds, and market fluctuations threatened their prosperity. But Wade and Sofia faced each challenge as they had learned to face everything. Together, as equal partners, each bringing their strengths to overcome whatever obstacles arose. Their children grew into capable adults. Samuel took over more of the daily ranch operations, showing the same dedication his father had, but with a more progressive attitude he had learned from his mother. Rose married a schoolteacher and opened a school in Council Bluffs, determined to ensure all children had access to education regardless of their background. James became a veterinarian, combining his love of animals with formal training that helped the entire region's ranching community. And Catherine, the youngest, surprised everyone by becoming a lawyer, fighting for women's rights and workers' protections in the courts. Wade and Sofia watched their children's successes with immense pride, knowing that the values they had instilled, hard work, respect for all people, the courage to challenge injustice, had taken root and flourished in the next generation. In 1905, on their 22nd wedding anniversary, Wade and Sofia took a rare trip away from the ranch, traveling to San Antonio so Sofia could see her childhood home one last time. Her brother had died the previous year, and his children were selling the family farm. Sofia wanted to say goodbye to the place where she had been raised, to close that chapter of her life properly. They stood together in the empty farmhouse where Sofia had grown up, and Wade held her as she wept for her parents, for the lost years with her brother, for the girl she had been before loss and necessity had forced her to remake herself. "I would not change anything," Sofia said through her tears. "Even the pain, even the hardship, because it all led me to you, to our life together. But I am still allowed to grieve what I lost." "Of course you are," Wade said, stroking her hair. "Grief and gratitude can exist together. We can mourn what we have lost while still treasuring what we have found." They buried Sofia's parents' few remaining possessions under a tree on the property, a small memorial to lives well lived. Then they turned their backs on the past and traveled home to Iowa, to the ranch and the life they had built together. As Wade grew older, he relied more and more on Sofia's judgment and wisdom. She had always been his partner, but as his energy waned and hers remained sharp, he found himself deferring to her decisions more often. It was not submission or weakness but recognition that she had always been his equal, and now age was simply shifting the balance between them once more. "You do not mind that I am making more of the decisions now?" Sofia asked one evening in 1910. They were both in their late 50s now, with gray in their hair and lines on their faces earned through years of laughter and hard work. "Why would I mind?" Wade asked, genuinely puzzled. "You have always been the brains of this operation. I just provided the muscle and the stubbornness." Sofia laughed. "You provided far more than that, but I am glad you see us as true partners, even now. Some men would chafe at having their wife make ranch decisions." "Those men are fools," Wade said bluntly. "You have forgotten more about running this ranch than most men will ever know." "Why would I not trust your judgment?" "Because you used to be one of those men," Sofia reminded him gently. "When I first arrived, you wanted me to stay in my place, to handle only domestic matters and leave the important decisions to you." "I was a fool then," Wade acknowledged. "But you fixed that. You showed me a better way, even when I did not want to see it. That is what love does, Sofia. It changes us, makes us better than we were. And you have spent 27 years making me a better man than I ever could have been without you." In 1915, Wade fell ill with pneumonia. The doctor from Council Bluffs came and did what he could, but at 64, Wade's body was worn from years of hard labor. For 3 days, he lay in the bed he had shared with Sofia for nearly 3 decades, drifting in and out of consciousness while his wife sat vigil beside him. "You cannot leave me," Sofia whispered, gripping his hand. "Not yet. We have so much more life to live together." Wade struggled to open his eyes to focus on her beloved face. "Been so lucky," he managed. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." "Then fight," Sofia commanded, her voice fierce even as tears streamed down her face. "Fight to stay with me. We are partners, Wade Harrington. That means you do not get to quit when things get hard." Whether it was Sofia's command or simple stubbornness or just luck, Wade turned the corner on the fourth day. The fever broke, and slowly, painfully, he began to recover. It took weeks before he could leave the bed, months before he could return to even light work. But throughout it all, Sofia was there, nursing him with the same competence she brought to everything else, refusing to let him give up or despair. "You saved my life," Wade told her when he was finally well enough to sit on the porch again, wrapped in blankets against the spring chill. "You would have done the same for me," Sofia replied. "That is what partners do. We fight for each other." The illness had aged Wade, leaving him weaker than before. He could no longer do the physical labor of ranching, but he found new purpose in teaching his grandchildren Samuel, and his wife had given them 5 grandchildren by 1915 the history of the ranch and the values that had built it. "The most important lesson I can teach you," Wade told his oldest grandson one afternoon, "is that strength comes in many forms. Your grandmother taught me that. I thought strength was about being in control, about making all the decisions and having everyone follow your lead. But real strength is knowing when to listen, when to adapt, when to let someone else's wisdom guide you. Real strength is partnership, equality, and mutual respect." His grandson, all of 12 years old, looked skeptical. "But grandfather, you built this ranch. You made all this happen." "No," Wade corrected gently. "Your grandmother and I built this ranch together. I may have started it, but she made it a home, a real legacy. She took a lonely man with too much pride and taught him how to be part of something greater than himself. Never forget that." In 1920, Wade and Sofia celebrated their 37th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children and grandchildren. The ranch was now primarily run by Samuel, but it still bore the stamp of Wade and Sofia's partnership in every decision and structure. They sat together on the porch that evening after everyone had gone, Wade at 70 and Sofia at 62, still holding hands after all these years. "No regrets?" Wade asked softly. "Not a single one," Sofia replied. "You gave me a place to belong, a purpose, a family. You learned to see me as an equal when the world told you not to. You built a life with me, not for me. How could I have any regrets about that?" "I am the one who should be grateful," Wade said. "I was so blind when you first arrived. I wanted someone to serve me, to fit into my narrow vision of how things should be. But you refused to be diminished. You insisted on being seen as a full person, as an equal. And in teaching me that lesson, you gave me the greatest gift of my life." "We gave each other gifts," Sofia said, resting her head on his shoulder. "That is what true partnership means. We both brought our whole selves, respected each other's strengths, supported each other through weaknesses, and built something neither of us could have created alone." "I love you," Wade said, the words still carrying the weight of truth after all these years. "My partner, my equal, my wife. I love you more today than I did when we married, and I loved you desperately even then." "And I love you," Sofia replied. "My stubborn rancher who learned the hardest lessons of all, how to share power, how to value others' contributions, how to be part of something greater than himself. You became the man I always knew you could be." Wade passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1923, at the age of 73, with Sofia holding his hand. The entire county attended his funeral, testament to the respect he had earned over 5 decades of fair dealing and honest work. But the eulogy that mattered most was the one Sofia gave, standing before the gathered mourners with dry eyes and a steady voice. "Wade Harrington was a good man," she said. "But more than that, He was a man who was willing to learn, to change, to grow beyond the limitations of his upbringing and his era. When I first came to work for him 41 years ago, he expected a servant, someone to keep his house and stay out of his way. But over time, he learned to see me differently, to see me as a partner, as an equal, as someone whose contributions were just as valuable as his own. That willingness to evolve, to challenge his own assumptions, to build a true partnership based on mutual respect, that was his greatest legacy. She paused, looking out over the crowd. We built this ranch together. We raised 4 children together. We created a life based on equality and partnership and love. And now, even though he is gone, that legacy continues in our children and grandchildren, in the values we instilled, in the example we set. Wade Harrington learned the true meaning of equals, and he lived that truth every day of our marriage. There is no greater tribute I can give him than that. Sofia lived another 15 years after Wade's death, continuing to help run the ranch with Samuel and remaining a vital presence in her children's and grandchildren's lives. She never remarried, saying that she had been blessed with one great love, and that was enough for any lifetime. When Sofia passed away in 1938 at the age of 80, she was laid to rest beside Wade under the oak tree they had planted together their first year of marriage. The tree was now massive, providing shade over the entire family plot, a living testament to what they had grown together. On her gravestone, by her own request, were the words, "Partner, equal, beloved." She taught him to see beyond expectations. And on Wade's stone, added at her direction after his death, he learned the lesson. He became the partner she deserved. The ranch continued for generations, passed down through Samuel's line. Each generation taught the story of their great-grandparents' unusual love story. How a stubborn rancher expecting a servant had met a woman who refused to be anything less than an equal. How she had challenged him, changed him, and ultimately showed him that true strength lay not in control but in partnership. How together they had built not just a successful ranch, but a family legacy based on mutual respect, equality, and love. The little vegetable garden Sofia had planted that first summer was maintained by each successive generation, expanded and improved but never abandoned. It stood as a symbol of what she had brought to the ranch: growth, nurture, and the understanding that building a home required just as much skill and dedication as building a business. In the years that followed, the Harrington Ranch became known not just for its prosperity, but for the progressive values it embodied. Women worked alongside men in decision-making roles. Workers were treated with respect and paid fair wages. The family supported education for all, regardless of background. These values, revolutionary when Wade and Sofia first implemented them, became the foundation upon which future generations built. And whenever anyone asked about the origins of these values, the story was always the same. It started with a woman who refused to be less than equal, and a man brave enough to learn from her. It started with a partnership that transformed both of them and created a legacy that would endure for generations. Because in the end, that was Sofia's greatest gift to Wade and his to her. They had shown each other and everyone who came after them what true partnership looked like. Not one person dominating and the other submitting, but 2 people bringing their full selves to the table, respecting each other's contributions, and building something greater than either could have achieved alone. That was the true meaning of equals. And it was a lesson the Harrington family would carry forward forever. A testament to a love story that began with conflict and expectation, but blossomed into one of the greatest partnerships the Iowa Prairie had ever seen.